The Martian desert stretched wide and silent, endless in its red and gold dust. The land looked empty, but beneath the surface, secrets older than human memory lay waiting. For many years, teams had searched these sands for signs of past life, old rivers, or buried minerals. Yet what the expedition of Ryan and his crew discovered was far stranger than any of that. Ryan stood at the edge of a shallow pit, the soft hum of machines around him. His helmet visor reflected the pale glow of the dig lights. He was young, an archaeologist who had studied ruins on Earth, yet even he felt out of place here on another world. This was not stone carved by human hands. It was something else, something deeper. Beside him knelt Lyra, brushing at the sand with care. She was older, calm in her movements, her eyes steady as she worked. Unlike Ryan, she was not trained in the study of objects, but in words. A linguist, she had spent her life piecing together dead languages and broken scripts. Here, though, there were no words to read, at least not yet. "It's stronger today," she said quietly. Ryan nodded. He could feel it even through his boots. A faint pulse ran beneath the ground. It was not like the vibration of a machine. It was slower, steady, like a heartbeat. For weeks they had tracked it, digging carefully, setting up instruments, mapping the underground shape. Every test confirmed what their senses already told them. Something was buried deep, and it was not natural. The rest of the team moved around the site, their suits gleaming under the Martian sun. There were 5 of them in total, engineers, scientists, and explorers. They all knew this mission was more than simple research. The signal had been detected by satellites first, a strange rhythm hidden beneath the dust storms. Many had believed it was a fault in the sensors. But when the pattern repeated, governments had agreed to send this small team. Hours passed as they cleared more sand away. Soon the machines struck a surface unlike the soft soil. The sound was sharp, almost metallic. Ryan hurried to the edge and brushed with his gloved hands. Beneath the red dust appeared a smooth wall, black as night. It was not stone. It reflected faintly like glass. The surface was cold to the touch even under the heat of the sun. The pulse grew stronger when they touched it. Not in sound, not in air, but in the chest, deep in the body. It was as if the wall itself was alive, beating in time with something unseen. "Not natural," whispered one of the engineers, stepping back. "No," said Ryan, his voice almost reverent. "This was built." That night, they gathered in their small camp beside the excavation pit. Outside, the Martian winds howled faintly, carrying dust across the horizon. Inside the shelter, the team spoke in low voices. Lyra studied her notes while others argued about what the wall could be. "An alien outpost," said one, shaking his head in disbelief. "Buried here for thousands of years." "Or a machine," said another. "Something still working under the ground." Lyra lifted her head. "Look at the rhythm. The signal is not random. It repeats in a way that feels almost human." Ryan frowned at her words. "What do you mean?" "The beats," she explained. "They match the rhythm of a human heart. Not perfect, but close. Faster at times, slower at others, like it is aware of those who stand near." The room fell silent. The idea was strange, perhaps too strange, but none could deny the feeling. When they stood by the wall, it felt alive. When they stepped away, the pulse grew faint. The following day, they continued their work, clearing more soil, uncovering more of the black wall. Soon they realized it was not a simple wall at all, but the edge of a vast chamber buried beneath the ground. Their scanners showed empty space below, shaped in perfect lines, wide and tall like a hall. At the center of that chamber, their instruments detected something massive, shaped like a rectangle. Perhaps a sarcophagus, perhaps a machine. It was impossible to know without opening the chamber. Ryan could not sleep that night. He stood outside the camp, staring at the stars above. Earth was a bright dot in the sky, distant and faint. He wondered if what they had found here would change that small world forever. Humanity had always searched for signs of life beyond their planet. But this was more than life. This was history waiting to be uncovered. Lyra joined him, silent at first. She looked at the stars too, her face calm but her eyes sharp. "You feel it, don't you?" she asked at last. "The pulse?" "No," she said softly. "The weight of it? Whoever made this, they wanted it to be found. And maybe they wanted us, humans, to be the ones to find it." Her words lingered in his mind long after she left. The carvings they would soon uncover, the great chamber, the sarcophagus, they were still hidden in the dust. But already Ryan felt as though the past was reaching out, pulling them forward. By the third week, the chamber was nearly exposed. The wall they had uncovered stretched upward in an arch, carved with faint patterns. At first they thought the marks were cracks, but under light they glowed faintly, lines of design too careful to be chance. Lyra studied them for hours, tracing each curve with her hands. They were not letters she knew, yet they carried rhythm like poetry. She could not read the language, but she felt its weight. These were not warnings. They were memories, left behind like a song without sound. On the final day of their excavation, the wall opened. Not by their machines, not by their tools, but by its own power. The pulse grew stronger until the black stone split with a deep sound that shook the ground. Dust rose into the air as the chamber yawned open, revealing a darkness untouched for ages. The team stood at the edge, lights cutting into the shadows. The chamber was vast, greater than any hall Ryan had ever seen. And in its center lay the massive shape their instruments had shown. A sarcophagus, tall and long, made of the same black stone. On its surface was carved a single figure. A man, standing with his head raised, a crown upon his brow. His eyes seemed to stare even through the stone. Beneath the figure were words none could read, but all could feel. Lyra whispered, her voice trembling for the first time. "The king who never died." And in that moment, the pulse in the chamber grew louder, filling their chests, as if the tomb itself had awakened at the sound of his name. The opening of the chamber changed everything. For weeks the team had worked with patience, brushing dust and studying walls. Now the tomb itself had responded as if it had been waiting. The black stone parted without tool or machine, revealing a path into the unknown. Ryan stood at the edge of the passage, his light cutting through the heavy darkness. The air inside was thin and dry, untouched for countless ages. Dust floated like faint smoke, disturbed by their steps. He felt his heart beat faster, not only from fear but from awe. He had dreamed of finding ruins from ancient times, but nothing on earth compared to this. Behind him, Lyra moved slowly, her scanner in hand. She was silent, her eyes following the glowing lines that ran across the chamber walls. The marks now pulsed faintly, as if the tomb was alive. They were not random scratches. They were designed patterns, each curve flowing into the next. The rest of the team entered carefully. Their lights revealed the scale of the place. The chamber stretched far above their heads, like a cathedral carved underground. Black pillars rose on either side, etched with the same glowing designs. The walls curved smoothly, showing no signs of age or cracks. Whoever built this, their craft was beyond human skill. At the center lay the sarcophagus. It was massive, longer than 3 men, its surface polished smooth. The carved figure upon the lid appeared lifelike, the crown shining faintly in the glow. Though made of stone, the eyes seemed to follow them as they moved. One of the engineers whispered, "It is like he is waiting." Ryan stepped closer, unable to resist. The figure carved upon the lid was not strange or alien. It was a human form, tall, broad, with strong features. The crown upon his brow was simple yet regal, its points curved upward like flames. His hands were crossed upon his chest, as if in eternal rest. "There is no question," Ryan said softly. "This tomb was built for a king. But how could they have known the shape of a man before humans walked the stars?" Lyra ran her fingers across the glowing lines near the base of the sarcophagus. She closed her eyes, feeling the rhythm of the pulse through her hand. "It is not only a tomb. It is a message. Look at the patterns. They are more than decoration. They are written. Not in words we know, but in a form of memory. They want us to see, not just read." She tapped a panel near the base. At once, the chamber responded. The glow spread from the sarcophagus outward, lighting the walls in waves. The air shimmered, and images appeared above the stone. They were not clear pictures but shapes of light, like shadows of history. The team stood in silence as the images shifted. They saw stars, countless and bright. Then they saw fire, worlds burning, ships falling into ruin. And always, in the center of the images, was the same figure, the crowned king, standing firm against the flames. The images faded, leaving the pulse louder than before. It beat in their chests like a second heart. "What does it mean?" one of the engineers asked. Lyra's eyes shone as she whispered, "It means he was real. Whoever he was, he fought in wars long before our time. This tomb is not just a resting place. It is a story." Ryan looked again at the sarcophagus. The figure carved on the lid no longer felt like stone. It felt like presence. Whoever the king was, he had left behind more than a body. He had left behind a memory carved into the very walls. The team spent hours exploring the chamber. Each pillar held markings, glowing when touched. Some showed images of strange landscapes, mountains of crystal, oceans under two suns, cities that floated in the air. Others showed battles, where ships clashed in fire. The crowned figure appeared in every scene. He was never young, never old, always the same, as if time did not touch him. It was Lyra who gave the figure his name. Standing before the largest carving, she read the flowing lines aloud. She could not translate the words, but she could feel their meaning. "The king who never died," she said. The name settled over them like a weight. None spoke against it. It felt true, as if the tomb itself had waited for them to say those words. That night, back in the camp, they argued about what they had found. Some believed the tomb belonged to an alien who looked like a man. Others thought it was proof that humans were connected to a greater history. Ryan did not argue. He sat in silence, staring at his notes. His mind replayed the images of burning stars and endless wars. If the king had lived through such battles, then why was he here, buried beneath the Martian sands? Lyra joined him later. She placed her notebook beside his. "I have been thinking," she said. "This place was not meant to be hidden forever. The pulse, the carvings, the opening of the door, it was all designed to call us. Not anyone else, not any other species. Us." Ryan frowned. "You think this was made for humans?" "Yes," she answered simply. "Everything we saw points to that. The figure is human. The pulse matches the rhythm of our hearts. The trials carved into the walls speak of endurance and sacrifice. They are not random. They are human stories." Ryan could not argue. Deep inside, he felt the same. It was not a tomb for a stranger. It was a tomb waiting for humanity to arrive. The next day, the team returned to the chamber, determined to study every detail. As they approached the sarcophagus, the glow brightened again, filling the space with warmth. Then the air shifted, and a voice rang out. It was not sound in the air but sound in the mind, clear and powerful. It spoke in no known language, yet each of them understood. "I am the king who never died. I am the guardian of the path you must walk. If you are here, then the time has come." The chamber trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the pulse grew faster, matching the quick beat of their hearts. The sarcophagus shone with light as if the figure carved upon it was about to rise. Ryan stepped forward, his breath caught in his chest. He had wanted discovery, but what he found was something greater. This was no dead ruin. This was the beginning of something alive. The king was not gone. His voice had reached across time. And now, humanity had answered. The chamber no longer felt like a place of silence. When the voice of the king filled their minds, the tomb became alive. The team stood frozen, their lights trembling in their hands. None of them had expected words. They had thought they would find stone, carvings, maybe objects of history. But the tomb had spoken. Ryan was the first to move. His heart raced, but his steps carried him closer to the sarcophagus. The glow across the lid shifted with his movement, following him like a living flame. The carved figure of the king seemed to watch him with steady eyes. "What are you doing?" one of the engineers whispered nervously. Ryan shook his head. "It is speaking to us. We cannot turn away." The voice came again, steady and strong, filling the chamber like the beat of the pulse. "You have come across the sea of stars. You have walked the sands of time. You are the ones I waited for." Lyra stepped beside Ryan. Her face was calm, but her eyes glowed with the fire of wonder. "It is not only a voice," she said. "It is memory. It is not speaking with sound, but with thought. We are hearing his mind." The images returned, flashing above the sarcophagus. This time they were sharper, clearer than before. The team saw armies marching under strange skies, great ships of metal flying between burning worlds, and the crowned figure at the heart of it all. He carried no weapon, yet wherever he stood, the soldiers behind him rose with courage. The vision changed. The king stood upon a broken world, his crown glowing like fire. Around him lay ruins, but he did not fall. Instead, he placed his hands upon the earth, and light spread across the land as if he was giving strength to the soil itself. When the images faded, the voice continued. "I am the one who endured. I am the one who did not fall. I became a shield when others broke. I became a fire when darkness grew. And I swore to wait until those who carried my image came to claim what was left behind." The chamber fell silent once more, except for the steady pulse. The team stood in awe, each one shaken by the words. "Did you hear that?" one engineer muttered. "He said we carry his image. He meant humans." Lyra nodded. "He was waiting for us. This tomb is not only his resting place. It is a beacon. He left it for humanity." Ryan felt a weight in his chest. The idea was too large, too impossible, yet it rang true. The king was not human in the way they were, yet his form was human, his voice spoke to their minds, and his story felt tied to their future. They moved through the chamber, searching for more. Each pillar glowed brighter than before, and new images appeared upon the walls. These were not battles. They were lessons. One showed people working together to lift great stones. Another showed a family huddled around a fire in the cold. A third showed a child holding the hand of the king, walking beside him without fear. "They are not just records of his life," Lyra said softly. "They are tests. He is showing us what he values. Endurance, unity, hope. That is what he believes makes us worthy." The team worked carefully, recording every detail, though deep inside they knew no camera could capture the feeling. The air itself carried the weight of history. When night came, they returned to their camp, but none could sleep. The voice of the king echoed in their thoughts. Ryan lay in his small bed, staring at the ceiling of the shelter. He kept hearing the words, "I became a shield when others broke." He wondered what kind of wars the king had faced. He wondered how many lives had depended on his strength. And most of all, he wondered why such a figure would care for humanity, a small people from a small planet. In the morning, they returned once more to the tomb. The pulse greeted them, stronger now, as if it knew they were coming back. When they stepped inside, the glow spread faster, lighting the chamber in golden light. The sarcophagus shifted. The carved figure did not move, but the lid began to slide. Dust fell from the edges, and the sound filled the air like thunder. The team gasped, stepping back. But Ryan stood firm, his eyes wide. From within the sarcophagus, more light spilled out. It did not reveal a body. Instead, it revealed another chamber hidden inside, lined with crystal panels. Each panel glowed with moving patterns, like streams of water. The voice of the king filled the chamber again. To endure is not enough. To live is not enough. You must choose. That is the path of those who carry my image. The crystals flashed, and suddenly the team was surrounded by visions again. But these visions were not of the past. They were of themselves. Ryan saw himself leading the team deeper into the tomb, choosing to risk everything for discovery. Lyra saw herself standing before walls of words, choosing to share knowledge with the world rather than keep it hidden. The engineers saw themselves building, repairing, sacrificing their safety for the others. Each vision showed a choice. Each choice carried weight. When the visions ended, the voice spoke one final time. The tomb is not only mine. It is yours if you are worthy. But worth is proven by trial, not by birth. Step forward, and the path will open. The sarcophagus closed again, sealing the crystal chamber within. The glow dimmed but did not vanish. The team stood in silence, shaken by what they had seen. Finally, Lyra spoke. He is calling us to prove ourselves. The trials are not about him. They are about us. Ryan nodded slowly. He felt the truth in her words. This tomb was not a grave. It was a challenge. The king who never died was not offering them answers. He was offering them a test. The others looked uneasy, but no one suggested turning back. They all knew the same thing. If they walked away now, they would never forgive themselves. Humanity had been chosen, and they were the first to answer that call. Ryan stepped forward, his voice steady though his heart pounded. Then we will face the trials. We will show him who we are. The pulse grew louder, as if the tomb itself agreed. The echo of the king's voice lingered in the air, silent yet alive. And with that, the path into the deeper halls began to open before them. The opening of the deeper halls was unlike the first. The black stone did not break apart with sound and dust. Instead, the walls themselves shifted, melting away as if they were only shadows. Where once there was smooth stone, now a corridor stretched forward, glowing faintly with the same golden light that came from the sarcophagus. The team stood together, staring at the new path. None spoke for a long moment. The silence was not empty but full of weight, as if the tomb itself was waiting for them to decide. Ryan broke the silence. This is it. He wants us to go forward. One of the engineers muttered, or he wants us to walk into a trap. But even the voice of doubt carried little strength now. Each of them had seen the visions. Each of them had felt the pulse of the tomb. Whatever dangers lay ahead, they could not turn back. Humanity had been called, and they were here to answer. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes steady. If we came this far, we cannot stop. The tomb is not trying to kill us. It is trying to speak to us. We must listen. With those words, she walked into the corridor. The others followed, their lights flashing across the smooth walls. The air was colder here, and the golden glow guided them forward. The passage ended in a chamber smaller than the first. The walls curved inward, forming a circle. In the center stood a tall pillar of crystal, shining with shifting patterns. The moment the team entered, the pulse grew stronger, and the crystal lit up. The voice of the king filled the chamber, not loud but steady, like a river flowing through their minds. You who walk the sands, you who carry my image, hear my message. I speak not to one world, but to many. I speak not to one age, but to all that will come. I am the king who never died. I was not chosen by crown or throne. I was chosen by the weight of survival. When others fell, I stood. When others broke, I endured. The crystal flashed, and images surrounded the team. They saw worlds falling into ruin, cities burning under strange skies, people fleeing into the night. In the center of every vision stood the crowned figure. His eyes carried no fear, only unshaken resolve. When my people lost hope, the king continued, I gave them mine. When the fire took their homes, I became their shelter. I was no greater than they, yet I chose to endure. And in choosing, I became more. Not eternal in body, but eternal in memory. That is why I never died. The images shifted again. Now the team saw humans, not the ancient armies of other worlds. They saw farmers working under the sun, explorers crossing oceans, builders raising cities from stone. They saw families surviving hunger, strangers helping strangers, soldiers standing together even when outnumbered. These are your stories, the king said. I saw them before you were ready to know me. I watched as you rose from the dust of your world. I saw your pain, your courage, your fire. And I knew you carried the same strength I once carried. That is why I chose you. The team felt their breath catch. The message was no longer about the king himself. It was about them. About humanity. Lyra stepped closer to the crystal. Her voice was quiet but steady. He is telling us that our history, our struggles, are proof. He believes we are like him. Ryan's eyes stayed on the visions. His chest tightened with pride and fear at the same time. He is telling us we are worthy. The king's voice grew stronger. To endure is not enough. To live is not enough. You must learn what it means to rise. This tomb is my gift, but also my test. The trials you face will show who you are. They will not ask for your strength alone, but for your unity. They will not ask for your power, but for your will. For it is not power that endures the ages, but the spirit that refuses to fall. The images changed once more. Now they saw the trials that awaited. They saw walls shifting like mazes, puzzles of light and shadow, illusions of fear that tested the mind more than the body. They saw a great door at the end, sealed by symbols that shone like stars. The crystal dimmed, and the voice softened, like a flame growing quiet. This is my message. I do not command you. I do not rule you. I ask only this, prove yourselves as those who never fall. Take the path, and the crown will be yours. Leave, and the tomb will sleep again, waiting for another age. The choice is yours. The chamber fell silent. The pulse continued, slow and steady, like a waiting heart. The team looked at one another. The message was clear. They had been chosen, but not forced. They could walk away and return home, leaving the tomb behind. Or they could step forward, face the trials, and claim the legacy the king had left for them. One of the engineers shook his head. This is too much. If we fail, what happens then? We could be trapped here forever. Another answered, if we walk away, we give up the greatest discovery in human history. The argument grew, voices rising with fear and excitement. But Ryan stayed silent. He stared at the crystal, his mind replaying the king's words. He thought of the farmers, the explorers, the builders in the visions. They were not kings, not warriors. They were ordinary people who endured because they had no other choice. That was humanity's strength. Finally, he spoke. His voice carried through the chamber, quiet but firm. He is not asking us to be perfect. He is asking us to endure. That is what humans do. That is why we are here. I say we take the trials. Lyra stepped beside him at once. Her voice was calm, certain. I agree. The king left this for us. Not for others, not for another time. For us. If we walk away, we betray everything he believed in. One by one, the others nodded, though fear still showed in their eyes. None wanted to face what lay ahead, but none could deny the truth. Humanity had been given a chance, and it was theirs to take. The moment they agreed, the crystal glowed again. The walls of the chamber shifted, revealing another passage leading deeper into the tomb. The pulse grew louder, steady and strong. The message of the king had been given. Now came the test. The new passage stretched ahead like a throat of black stone, glowing faintly with golden lines. The air inside was colder than before, carrying a sharpness that made every breath heavy. The team moved carefully, each step echoing against the smooth floor. They felt as if unseen eyes were watching them, judging their every move. Ryan walked at the front, his light scanning the walls. Behind him, Lyra followed with her small scanner, her calm eyes fixed on the shifting symbols that glowed faintly across the corridor. The engineers came last, their tools ready, though no tool seemed strong enough for a place like this. After a long walk, the corridor opened into the first trial chamber. It was vast and circular, the ceiling lost in shadows. In the center stood 3 tall pillars of crystal, each glowing with a different color: blue, red, and green. Between them lay a deep chasm with no visible bottom. A narrow bridge stretched across the chasm, but the bridge was broken in the middle, leaving a wide gap. The king's voice filled the chamber, calm and steady. To endure is not only to stand alone, but to stand together. Cross, and you will know your first worth. The bridge was too wide to jump, too fragile to carry heavy weight. The team gathered at the edge, speaking in low voices. It cannot be crossed, one engineer said. Not without falling. It can be crossed, Lyra answered. The king would not give us a task without a way forward. The pillars must be the key. Ryan studied the glowing crystals. Each one pulsed with a rhythm, different but steady. The blue crystal beat slowly, the red crystal beat fast, and the green pulsed with a pattern that reminded him of a heartbeat. He realized they were not random. They were signals waiting for a response. Together, Ryan whispered. He said together. They placed their hands on the pillars at the same time. When they did, the crystals flared with light, and the broken bridge shifted. A new section of stone rose from the chasm, but it stopped short of reaching the other side. Not enough, one engineer muttered. Again, Ryan said firmly. They tried again, pressing their hands together in rhythm, matching the pulse of the crystals. This time the bridge grew longer, stretching farther across the gap. The message was clear: the bridge could only be completed if they worked in unity, moving as one. On the third attempt, all 5 of them placed their hands together on the pillars, matching their rhythm to the heartbeat of the green crystal. Slowly, carefully, the bridge extended fully across the chasm, locking in place with a sound like stone grinding. The voice of the king returned. To endure alone is strength. To endure together is power. You have passed the first trial. They crossed the bridge in silence, their steps heavy with awe. Each of them understood the meaning. Humanity's strength was not only in survival, but in unity. The second chamber was smaller, but darker. The walls reflected no light, and the glow of their lamps seemed to fade. The moment they entered, they heard whispers. Faint, broken voices filled the air, calling their names. Ryan froze. The whispers grew louder in his ears, shaping into words. He heard his own doubts, his own fears. He heard his teachers on earth telling him he was too young, too untested. He heard his father's voice saying he would never achieve greatness. The words pressed into him like cold knives. He looked at Lyra. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, as if she too was hearing her own fears. The engineers shifted uneasily, clutching their helmets as if the voices were crawling inside. The king's voice spoke again, but softer this time, almost hidden within the whispers. To endure is not to silence fear, but to face it. The trial was clear. They could not fight the voices. They could not escape them. They had to walk through them. Ryan took a deep breath and stepped forward. Each step made the voices sharper, louder, but he pressed on. He remembered the images the king had shown them: farmers under the sun, explorers on the seas, families by the fire. None of them had lived without fear. They had endured because they moved forward despite it. Lyra followed him, her voice breaking the silence. The voices are not real. They are only shadows of our minds. Walk forward. One by one, the others followed. The whispers screamed, twisting into sharper words, but none of the team turned back. They walked together until they reached the far end of the chamber. As they touched the wall, the whispers vanished like smoke in the wind. The glow returned to the chamber, and the king's voice filled it once more. Fear is the shadow of the heart. To endure is not to be without fear, but to rise with it. You have passed the second trial. Relief swept through them, though exhaustion lingered. Each trial was more than a test of body. It was a test of spirit. The third chamber opened into a great hall lined with mirrors. The mirrors reflected not their bodies, but their choices. Each person saw themselves in different forms: strong, weak, cruel, kind. Ryan saw himself walking away from the tomb, living a safe life but never touching greatness. He also saw himself leading, but alone, leaving the others behind. The king's voice filled the hall. To endure is not to walk every path. It is to choose the path that gives life meaning. The mirrors shifted, showing doors of light. Each door led to a different future. To pass, each of them had to choose one door, knowing it would shape the rest of their journey. Ryan stepped toward the door that showed him with his team, standing together, carrying burdens side by side. Lyra chose the door that showed her teaching others, sharing knowledge freely. The engineers each chose doors of building and protecting. When the last door was chosen, the hall trembled. The mirrors shattered, but the doors of light opened, joining into one path. The king's voice rose for the third time. Choice gives weight to endurance. To rise is to choose not for the self, but for the whole. You have passed the third trial. The team stepped forward, hearts pounding, spirits heavy but strong. They had faced unity, fear, and choice. Each trial had drawn out the essence of what it meant to be human. As they left the hall, the passage opened again. The glow grew brighter, leading them toward a vast chamber. At its center, a great door stood, carved with the crown of the king. It pulsed with golden light, waiting. Ryan's voice was quiet, but full of strength. These are not just trials. They are our story. He is showing us what makes us human. Lyra nodded. And he is telling us we are ready. The pulse beat louder, like the heart of the tomb itself. Ahead of them lay the final chamber, where the greatest trial waited. The great door loomed before them, higher than any wall they had passed. Its surface was smooth black stone, carved with the image of a crown surrounded by flames. The golden light of the tomb pulsed across the carving, steady as a heartbeat. The team stood at the base, their breaths heavy with awe. For a long time, no one spoke. The silence was deep, as if the tomb itself held its breath. Then the voice of the king filled the chamber, low and steady. Beyond this door lies the heart of my legacy. The crown is waiting. But know this, the crown is not given, it is chosen. To wear it is not to rule, but to bear. Step forward if you are ready to carry the weight of eternity. The door began to shift. Slowly, with the sound of grinding stone, it opened inward, revealing the final chamber. The space inside was vast, circular, and unlike any they had seen before. The walls rose high above them, glowing with streams of light that curved like rivers of fire. The floor was smooth, marked with circles that shone faintly beneath their feet. At the very center stood a raised platform. Upon it floated a crown made of pure light. It was not metal, nor stone. The crown shimmered like fire caught in crystal, its shape simple but perfect. It turned slowly in the air, pulsing with the same rhythm as the tomb. The team moved closer, each step heavy with wonder. None of them spoke. None of them dared. When they reached the edge of the platform, the king's voice returned, stronger than ever. This is the crown without a king. I did not wear it, for I was not its master. I was only its guardian. I endured so that one day, those who carried my image would stand here. The crown is not power. The crown is burden. It will grant you strength, but it will demand your soul. To take it is to give yourself to all who will come after you. To refuse is to leave it for another age. The choice is yours. The crown flared with light, and visions filled the chamber. The team saw themselves wearing it, one after another. Each vision showed a different future. Ryan saw himself crowned, standing at the head of fleets of ships, guiding humanity into the stars. He saw victories and triumphs, but also endless wars. His life stretched beyond the years of any man. He saw himself growing weary, yet never allowed to rest. Lyra saw herself crowned, sharing knowledge with worlds, teaching and guiding. She saw peace, she saw growth, but she also saw loneliness, a life where her voice carried across centuries but her heart never found rest. The engineers saw themselves crowned as well, building vast machines, protecting cities across worlds. Yet in every vision, they too were alone, bearing the crown not as glory but as endless duty. When the visions ended, the crown dimmed again, waiting. The team stood in silence, shaken. One engineer whispered, "It is not a gift. It is a prison." Another muttered, "It would destroy whoever wears it. No man or woman should live forever." Ryan said nothing at first. His mind replayed the visions. He had dreamed of discovery, of glory. But now he understood. The king had not been great because of the crown. The king had been great because he refused it. He endured without it, carrying the burden as a man, not as an eternal figure. That was why he was the king who never died. His deathless name was not because of power, but because his story lived on. Lyra's voice was quiet, but firm. The crown is not meant to be worn. It is meant to test us. He wanted to see if we would reach for power, or if we would choose a different path. That is the true trial. Ryan looked at her, then back at the crown. He knew she was right. If they took it, they would lose themselves. If they refused it, they would prove that humanity's strength lay not in one ruler, but in the many who endured together. The engineers debated fiercely, their voices echoing across the chamber. Some argued that humanity could not afford to leave such power behind. Others said it was too dangerous, too heavy a burden. Finally, Ryan raised his voice above the rest. "Listen to what the king told us. He said the crown is not given, it is chosen. He said to endure is not to rule, but to rise. The king never wore it. He endured without it. That is what he left us to learn. The crown is not our future. We are our future." The chamber grew still. The crown pulsed once, twice, as if listening. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the light. "We will not take it. Humanity must earn its path, not inherit it. Our strength is not in a single ruler who never dies, but in the many who live and endure together." With those words, the crown flared brighter than ever before. For a moment, the chamber was filled with golden fire, blinding in its brilliance. The team shielded their eyes, hearts pounding. When the light faded, the crown was gone. The platform stood empty, yet the room still glowed with warmth. The king's voice came one last time, soft but filled with pride. You have chosen well. The crown is not worn by one. It is carried by all. My burden is yours, but it is not prison. It is legacy. Go now, and carry it into the stars. The walls of the chamber shifted, opening a path back toward the surface. The pulse of the tomb grew quieter, as if the heart within it had finally found rest. The team stood in silence, their faces lit by the fading glow. None of them felt like victors. They felt something greater. They felt chosen, not for power, but for purpose. Ryan looked at Lyra. We came here searching for the king. We found ourselves instead. She nodded, her voice calm. And that was his gift all along. Together, they turned toward the path of light. Behind them, the chamber grew dim, the crown of fire gone, the tomb silent once more. The king who never died had given them his final lesson. The choice was made, and humanity had proved worthy. The team walked back through the long passages of the tomb, their lights flickering across stone walls that now seemed less cold and more alive. The golden glow that had guided them before was fading, like a great flame finally at rest. Yet there was no sadness in the air. There was peace. Ryan led the way, his steps steady but thoughtful. He kept glancing back at the others, as if making sure they were still there. Each of them carried the same quiet expression. They had entered the tomb searching for secrets, but they were leaving with something greater. As they moved through the corridor, they passed the chambers where the trials had taken place. The bridge of unity was gone, leaving only the chasm. The chamber of whispers was silent, no voices filling the air. The hall of mirrors lay dark and broken. The trials had ended, their purpose complete. It feels like the tomb is closing behind us, one engineer said softly. No, Lyra replied, shaking her head. It is not closing. It is resting. Its task is done. When they finally reached the outer gates, the same massive doors that had once resisted their every effort stood open, waiting. The desert sun poured in, blinding after so long in the glow of the tomb. The dry wind touched their faces, carrying the scent of sand and the sound of the endless horizon. For a long moment, none of them stepped outside. They turned to look back into the dark passage. It was strange to think that the king who never died now slept again, not as a ruler but as a story that would live in their voices. Ryan's voice broke the silence. We will not see him again. But we will carry him with us. Lyra nodded. That is what he wanted. Not worship, not crowns, but remembrance. At last they stepped into the light. The desert stretched before them, endless and harsh, but it no longer felt empty. Behind them lay the tomb, silent and eternal, waiting beneath the sands for another age, or perhaps never to be opened again. The journey back to their ship was long. The sun beat down, and the sand shifted beneath their boots, but their hearts were lighter. They no longer felt like explorers lost in a strange land. They felt like messengers. When they reached the ship, they paused once more at the ramp. The engineers looked at Ryan and Lyra, waiting. The decision of what to tell the world was heavier than any treasure. What do we say when they ask? One engineer finally asked. Do we tell them everything? Do we speak of the crown? Of the trials? Ryan looked out at the horizon, where the desert met the sky. We tell them the truth. Not the whole truth, perhaps, but the truth that matters. The king who never died was not a ruler with power beyond measure. He was a man who endured. His gift is not the crown, but the lesson of endurance, unity, and choice. That is what we carry home. The others nodded slowly. They understood. The world might hunger for tales of power, of lost weapons and treasures, but what humanity needed was something greater. It needed hope. It needed to remember what it meant to endure. The ship lifted from the sands, engines rumbling as it climbed toward the sky. From the window, the team watched the tomb shrink until it was only a dark mark in the golden desert. Then even that was gone, swallowed by distance. The silence inside the ship was deep, but not heavy. It was the silence of reflection, of minds shaping the story they would tell. Days later, when they returned to the colony, crowds gathered to greet them. Questions rose from every side. What had they found? Was there treasure? Was there power? Was there proof of the king who never died? Ryan stood before them, his voice calm and strong. We found the tomb. We walked its halls. We faced its trials. And we learned this: the king who never died was not great because he ruled. He was great because he endured. He left us no weapon, no throne, no crown of power. He left us his story. And his story is this: humanity's strength lies not in one who leads forever, but in all who rise together. The crowd was silent at first. Some looked disappointed, but others looked moved. Slowly, the silence turned to murmurs, then to cheers. The words were not what many expected, but they were what people needed. The story spread quickly, carried across colonies and stations, from world to world. The tale of the tomb became legend. It was told in schools, painted on walls, whispered in quiet places where people sought hope. The trials became symbols: the bridge of unity, the chamber of fear, the hall of choice. Each one a reminder of what it meant to be human. Years passed. Explorers still searched the desert, but none found the tomb again. It was as if it had vanished back into the earth, hidden until the time was right once more. Some doubted the tale, calling it myth. But those who had walked the tomb knew the truth. Ryan and Lyra often spoke of that day, though never in full detail. They agreed that some truths were not meant to be carried in words but in actions. They lived by the lessons the king had left, guiding others, building bridges of trust, facing fear, and choosing paths that served the whole rather than the self. One night, years after their return, Ryan stood under the stars with Lyra at his side. The colonies had grown, the ships had spread farther, and humanity had begun to step boldly into the wider galaxy. "Do you think we will ever find him again?" Ryan asked quietly. Lyra smiled faintly. "We already carry him with us. Every time we endure, every time we choose to walk together, we find him again. The king who never died is not in the tomb. He is in us." Ryan looked up at the stars. They stretched endlessly across the black sky, each one a world waiting to be reached. He felt the weight of the journey ahead, but he also felt the strength to face it. The crown was gone, but its light lived on, not as power, but as legacy. And so the story of the king who never died did not end in the desert. It lived in the hearts of those who heard it, guiding them as they built their future. The tomb was silent, the crown unseen, but the lesson endured. Humanity carried it into the stars, proving that the greatest gift was not a ruler without death, but a people who chose to live with purpose. The king who never died had left no throne, no scepter, no empire. He had left something far greater. He had left a legacy.